before we get started, let's go ahead and invoke our teacher's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhana Shakyamuni Buddhana Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Welcome everyone on this beautiful Sunday day. The weather's finally cooling, makes me feel better. Makes me want to go outside more. So today's topic, I wanted to slightly discuss the practice of Buddhism, what constitutes a practice, what's a Buddhist, I guess, also, and then just kind of go over some of the things that a Buddhist might do, right, as part of the practice. So we call it a practice because it is just that. It's a practice, right? It's not something that's just passively done, right? You can't just read about Buddhism and read about meditation, read about all the teachings, and then just kind of stop there, right? We have to actively do something. We have to actively engage in the practice. So practice and study really go hand in hand when it comes to Buddhist practice. Because if you're just practicing, then you're relying on superstition and you're just kind of relying on the words that you're reading from the book or from the teacher that you're hearing from, right? And if you're just studying, then you're basically just becoming a scholar. You're not really actively doing anything in the practice. You're just reading and reading, and you're not really gaining any true insight. Right? You may have the intelligence, you may have the knowledge of Buddhism and its practices, but you don't really have the true wisdom that comes from the practice itself. So generally speaking, especially in the West, we have, I guess, about 3 types of Buddhists, right? We have the Buddhist people that are born into it, right? So if the family is Buddhist, then they're typically also Buddhist as children, right? Especially in a lot of the East Asian countries that are Buddhist, you're born into the religion, basically. The second type are the convert Buddhists, which is most of us, right? Most of Western society is a convert Buddhist. And the third kind is kind of probably a controversial term for it, but I guess it's the Buddhists that kind of fall into the general idea, or general sense of kind of learning about it, practicing it as like a fashion trend, basically, right? It's basically what's cool, what's hip now, or whatever, or whenever it is, right? So it's really the people that are interested in the idea, the concept of Buddhism, and not truly dedicated to the practice, or truly really wanting to learn or practice anything. They're just kind of in it because it's something cool, something new to them, something, mysterious or whatever. And a lot of time it's people that kind of go to yoga classes, right? Back in college, I had a friend that owned a yoga studio, so I'd pretty much just go and take free yoga classes whenever, right? But some of the classes that are taught from like guest instructors or special instructors that are usually Indian, right? Or I forgot what other ones, but usually they're Indians, right? So they usually they bring some sort of meditation concept with their teaching, with their instructions, or Buddhist or Hindu kind of mindsets or ideas. So that kind of transfers into the students, and some of the students become, interested in Buddhism or whatnot. Or the people that come from like college courses, right? We get a lot of students come in from a world religions class or anthropology class, some sort of class that's that's basically teaching world religions. Not to say that any of these people that kind of fall in this category are not sincere in their wish to practice or to learn, but a lot of time it's just kind of a phase, I guess I can call it, where they kind of get into it for a while and kind of leave, right? And we see that a lot here, right? We'll see members come for quite some time, and then they kind of just stop coming or don't come as often. Or when we're hearing about people who say they've practiced for so many years, but their knowledge is limited. Their knowledge is not where it should be at the number of years that they've been practicing for, right? So the practice and study are very important. They really have to go hand in hand. And I think I've emphasized so many times that you have to really kind of start from the foundation teachings and kind of work your way up. Because that's the only way we're really going to be able to fully comprehend the teachings correctly, fully understand them, be able to grasp them. Because Buddhism, again, is just basically a sandbox of teachings, right? Each sun grain represents a teaching. So saying that it's just trying to show you like how vast the teachings are, how much of it there is out there. So we really have to take it basically with a teaspoon, right, at a time. We can't take a whole cup at a time or a whole handful at a time. We really have to scoop it out teaspoon by teaspoon, because we really have to start easy and kind of work our way up. So what is a Buddhist, I guess, right? So Buddhist, from the way I'm going to explain it, is someone a true Buddhist, right? A true Buddhist, whether it's a convert or someone who's grown up in Buddhism, which I would also say, from my experience and from my observations in the last 10-15 years, the convert Buddhists are probably the most able and capable of learning and teaching and understanding Buddhism, versus those that kind of grew into it, right, or born into it. And I say that because those are the people that are kind of born into it, unless they actually go to like temples where they do teachings, or go to like a course or a retreat or something where it's actually being taught, a lot of time they grew up with the superstitious side of Buddhism, right, where it's all about kind of praying and just hoping for the good luck or hoping for the merit, and then doing good for the temple or for the monks and nuns, and kind of building that merit field for them, which is good, right? You still want to do that, but their understanding philosophically and psychologically of Buddhist teachings is very limited. So they really don't have the full foundation, the full view of the practice, versus those that are kind of converted into it, hopefully at least, they're the ones that really dig into the teachings, right? They want to know what works, because as a Western society, we have this habitual mentality of wanting to know how things work, right, and why they work, and how they came into being, right? So because of that curiosity, we actually go into the teachings, we read the teachings, we practice the teachings, we do the research, the necessary research, and the analysis part of it. So we really have a good grasp, a good foundation of this, the philosophical side of Buddhism, the psychological side of it, and every other aspect that kind of really create this wholesome practice. So Buddhists is just that, right? They are the ones that do the practice and do the study hand in hand, right? You can have one or the other. And traditionally, a Buddhist is someone who's taken the refuge in the 5 precepts, right? That's essentially your initiation into the religion or into the temple, right? So for us, for example, at this temple, like a true temple member, a true member, is someone that's taken the refuge in the precepts, right? Whether with us or somewhere else, and now they've like called us their home temple, right? So that's an actual Buddhist, but it's not just about the title, because you can be Buddhist really without the title. You don't have to necessarily take the refuge in the precepts to become a Buddhist. That's just really just the official side of it, right? That's just the kind of the extra oomph of it, really. But a true Buddhist really wouldn't need the title, doesn't need the certificate, doesn't need the precepts and the refuge. Not that they don't need it. I mean, they follow it, but they don't really need to have it like officially given to them, right, from a teacher or from the temple. But for us, an official member or official Buddhist is someone who's taking the refuge in the precepts. And in most Vietnamese traditions, like our temple, our members wear the gray robes, the bluish robes. That kind of indicates, that gives you an idea of who's who, really. And then we also have types of robes. So our standard robe have the short sleeve. Those are just people who have taken the refuge in the precepts. Then we have the longer sleeve, like Leon's, for those that's taken the Bodhisattva vows, and even longer sleeve for the monks and nuns. The nuns always have a gray and yellow robe. The junior monks, like myself, have the gray robe, and then the fully ordained senior monks will have the yellow on yellow, like you see on teacher. So knowing that, it gives you an idea of like who's who and where they're kind of at the temple. So it helps you identify a temple member if you have like any questions or if you need assistance with someone. It kind of helps you out that way. Anything else about the robes? No. Okay. The robe is different according to tradition. So in Chinese Buddhism or Chinese temples, the member robes are actually black. And those that take in Bodhisattva vows in Chinese traditions also have a brown cassia robe, the outside robe. And that's strictly only in Chinese Buddhism. So Chinese and Vietnamese Buddhism are the only traditions I'm aware of that have robes for members. All the other traditions don't necessarily. Some of like the Theravada traditions, the members wear all white as a form of respect and gratitude and purity. So most Theravada temples, you'll see the members wear pretty much all white. They don't have robes, but they just wear white clothing. But really, the robes are not important. They don't really indicate any importance of any way, shape, or form, right? Just because I wear a robe as a monk doesn't necessarily mean that my practice, where I am a better person than those who aren't, right? I've just taken that extra step to fulfill my hopes and dreams and aspirations, right, of helping me and helping other people. So if I've taken the hard step of leaving the world behind, I guess, in a way, right, leaving the normal society, normal life, and kind of divorced myself from the outside world to continue the practice and the teachings and to learn the teachings. But a lot of people, there's a lot of lay teachers out there that are very knowledgeable, and they're very good at explaining the Dharma. There's not very many Mahayana lay teachers that I'm aware of that are fairly well known. A lot of the lay teachers that I know of have met and followed and heard are typically practice the Theravada tradition. And they're usually just meditation teachers. They're not necessarily Dharma teachers. But the thing with that also is because technically a layperson cannot really be a Dharma teacher, right? That's really exclusively for the monks and nuns, because that's their vocation, that's their life goal, is to learn, to teach, to learn and to study all the dharmas, study all the sutras and teachings, and give that to the community, to give it to the world, right? So that's probably why we don't see many Mahayana lay teachers, but in the Theravada tradition, a layperson can request permission from their teacher to teach, right? So that's kind of where the exception lies. Which is nothing wrong with that, right? And the teacher is able to say no. The teacher is able to guide them further, or to give them further instruction, or how-tos and whys and wheres and all this other stuff, to ensure that their teaching and understanding is pretty holistic and complete before they go out and teach the Dharma or teach meditation. Because meditation, as simply as it can be very simply explained, right? It doesn't have to be very elaborate or in-depth. It could be simply explained, but there is also some dangers with that. Because if you don't practice meditation correctly, it really could be negatively, it can impact you negatively, right? It's not all positive. There is kind of a dark side of meditation, where we get to some points where if you're not doing it correctly the first time, right? If you're not doing it correctly to start out with, then you're not going to have a full effect of how transformative meditation can be. If you're not doing it correctly, then you're not going to be able to concentrate, you're not going to be able to kind of fulfill the goal, and then you're just going to really get discouraged and give up, right? Because you're thinking, I can't do this, I'm not doing it right, or whatever other thought comes up, right? But if that's not the case, and if you do succeed, right, in knowing how to actually meditate and focus and concentrate, and you start getting into the higher levels of meditation and different levels of consciousness, at that point is where it can get a little messy. It can get a little difficult to fully understand, because in the higher levels of meditation, and this is mentioned in the sutras, where sometimes when we get to those levels, we think it's liberation. We think that we've attained nirvana, because you're at a point of complete peace and joy and exhilaration, and you're just feeling completely free. So we've been warned about those kind of dangers, right? Warning that you don't want to misinterpret what level you're at, or how you think, or where you think you're at. And if you get to a point where, like, oh, I've attained enlightenment, I'm an arhat now, right? Or I'm a whatever. And then the danger from that is then they go out and tell the world, oh, I've attained enlightenment, I'm an enlightened person, right? And that's a huge no-no. And not only that, different forms and types of meditations can also be very, very dangerous. The meditation on death, for instance, or the meditation on the 32 parts of the body, where meditating on the body, or the 32 parts of the body, is basically, it's a meditation to help you get over sensual desire, right? Because when we look at people, we automatically judge as beautiful, as ugly, as good looking, as not good looking, right? And that's one of the defilements of the mind, is sensual desire. And so to overcome that, we meditate on the body, and we meditate on the aspects of the body, and 32 parts of the body, which is basically the grossness of the body. So we're meditating on how gross sweat is, and hair, and pus, and blood, and urine, and feces, and all the body parts that kind of make us who we are, make us the shape and what we are as a person. So we meditate on that to get over sensual desire. But what can also come of that is if you do that, sometimes we can start to really hate ourselves. We can start hating our body because we're realizing how ugly and disgusting it is, and all the defilements that's in us, right? And we're like, oh my God, I'm so disgusting. I'm this, I'm that, and they commit suicide. And there's a lot of stories of monks that have done that because they get into this mindset of, I'm just useless. I'm basically just skin of trash on the inside. Why even bother with life? And they kill themselves. There's many stories of monks back in the day that taken their life because of that. So there's a lot of dangers in meditation. So that's why typically we don't see lay Dharma teachers, because even though they may be experienced as far as years of practice or study, I guess, right? They may not have sufficient, they either don't have one or the other, right? They don't have sufficient years of practice or sufficient years of study. If they do, then they just don't have the in-depth knowledge enough, right? Even though they've practiced and studied for 10 years, they don't, since they're a lay person, they're committed to their family, they're committed to a work life, they're committed to society and the culture they're in, right? So their mind's distracted for the majority of their day, the majority of their life, where they only dedicate 1-2 hours a day or even a week to practice the Dharma and study the Dharma. And so their understanding and comprehension is fairly limited, right? So even they may have been practicing for 10-20 years, their limitation or their understanding may be slightly limited. So if they do practice or do teach the Dharma, they can kind of maybe misinterpret something or not give full correct description of something, or whatever it may be. So we really have to be able to fairly judge a teacher or a Dharma teacher, right? And that's kind of one of the preliminary things when we are first maybe coming into Buddhism or coming into wanting to learn or practice, is to be able to find a good Dharma teacher. Unfortunately, here in San Antonio, we don't have many. We have like 4 or 5 different temples. But I think, as far as I am aware, we are the only temple that have a Dharma service, English Dharma service and chanting service. There's a few centers, they're not actually temples, right? So there's like the Tibetan Center, the Zen Center, where it is in English, but they don't have a monastic community. There's no monks or nuns there. So even there, the teachers that are teaching are also fairly limited in their knowledge and practice and ability to perceive and to teach the Dharma. So anyway, so when we are kind of temple hopping, right, in search of a Dharma teacher, it's important to be able to analyze the teacher, essentially, right? You're basically analyzing their way of teaching, you're analyzing what they're teaching, you're kind of trying to establish a thought of, okay, they may know what they're talking about, or they don't know what they're talking about, or that's wrong, or I don't believe this, I don't believe that, right? But anyway, you're basically shopping for a teacher. So here in the city, we're fairly limited. So hopefully the teacher and I and the nun do a good job of Dharma teaching. But in other places, in bigger cities, especially in California or other places where there's literally thousands of temples, you have a much bigger pool of candidates, I guess. I forgot what my point was. Because I go off topic so much. Okay, let me just revert back to the original topic of discussion, I guess. So anyway, so it is important, especially for those that are new to Buddhism and to the practice, it's essential and important that you put the practice and the teaching hand to hand. Because even as a monk, right, Leon and I, Leon's here so often, we have this kind of telepathic connection sometimes, right? We just look at each other, we immediately know what the other's saying, right? Especially now when we're kind of struggling just in a disarray of phases of the construction of the new temple, right? So sometimes it moves pretty quickly or it moves at a steady pace, but sometimes it moves at a glacier pace, and we just kind of get frustrated, or something's not happening when it said it's supposed to happen, or whatever it may be, right? And sometimes the contractor would be here, the workers be here, and they're talking and they're saying, "Oh, we're doing this, we do that." And Leah and I just look at each other, we're like, either roll our eyes or just kind of like have this telepathic connection where we're like, we know exactly what's going on or what's not going to happen or what will happen, right? I lost my point again. Oh yeah, so even as a monk, right, it's literally my job to incorporate my practice and study into my life, right? And that's really what any Buddhist should do, is to incorporate the practice into daily life. But that's not always possible. It's not always easy, depending on the circumstances, the situations that we're in, right? We always say, or we always read and hear that we should always be mindful of what we're doing. Every action that we do is an opportunity for mindfulness, is an opportunity for meditation. In the monastic life, right, we have like 50-something gathas, 52, 55 gathas, which are basically just small mantras that we would say for all the different activities that we do. So when we wake up, we say the gatha. When we, get ready, get dressed, take a shower, cook, clean, walk, sleep, anything that we do, we have a gatha that we say, because it's supposed to help us become mindful of what we're doing. Because sometimes, in most days, right, if we go to work or go to school, our days are so automatic, they're so habitual, right? It's robotic. We wake up at exactly the same time, we do things at exactly the same time, same way every single day. It just becomes so automatic that we just forget when we even woke up. We forget how we got to work, how we get to school, because it's just so automatic, right? So the practice of mindfulness, or at least for us for the gathas, is to help us be aware of what we're doing, where we're at, how we're doing it, right? Because everything is a good opportunity to be mindful, to be able to be aware of what's going on. It's one thing to just sweep and mop and dust and whatever, right? It's just sweeping or sweeping or sweeping. But in a Buddhist perspective, from that, sweeping can mean a lot of different things. There's so many teachings on just the action of sweeping, right? Because I'm gonna stop there and say a story. I forgot which monk it was, but it was a monk during the Buddha's time. It was two brothers. The older brother, was really smart. He was really dedicated to the practice. He was he had already become an arhat. And his younger brother, not so much. Complete polar opposite, right? He was kind of dumb. He was really slow. He didn't really know how to practice, how to meditate. He couldn't memorize any of the sutras. And so all the other monks and his brother especially kind of picked on him, saying, "Oh, you're so stupid. You can't memorize the sutras or anything of the practices. Just go back home, right? Because now our parents are alone. Go back and take care of them." But the younger brother insisted that no, he wanted to become a monk. He wanted to practice. He wanted to be there. And so when the Buddha had heard that the monk was struggling, he sent them off to the nunnery, right? He sent them off to go see the nuns, to teach the nuns. But he didn't know how to teach because he couldn't memorize any of the sutras or any of the teachings. So all he did was just sweep. He was sweeping and sweeping. And the nuns saw this and they just sat by and watched him sweep, right? And so when they went back to the temple and the Buddha came back and kind of asked for their evaluation of the monk, all the nuns were like, OMG, he taught us such a high teaching, right? He was one of the best teachers that you've sent to us. And Buddha was asking, what did he teach you? And the nuns were like, oh, let me give you the list of teachings, right? So just by sweeping, he taught the nuns to sweep away the defilements of the mind. It's easy to see the defilements, right? We know we have bad habits. We know that we have judgment and bias and greed and anger and hate within us, right? We see it, but we can't necessarily get rid of it. So he was sweeping away the defilements of the mind. He was sweeping away the three poisons that create the 3 points of greed, anger, and hatred. He's sweeping away all the hindrances and everything else that kind of block us from attainment of enlightenment. So just by sweeping, right? Helps, hopefully, should be, supposed to be, help us be mindful of sweep away our defilements of the mind, to sweep away the dirty dust that covers our mirror of enlightenment, right? And that's one thing I always teach about the mirror of enlightenment. The mirror of enlightenment is the mirror represents our true being, our true nature, our Buddhahood, right? But our mirror is basically foggy, right? Like when we get out of the shower, it's fogged up, we really can't see anything. Maybe not clearly, maybe a little bit clearly, maybe not at all. So we use different methods to clean the mirror, right? So we can maybe use the wet towel to kind of wash away the mirror, but that still is streaky. It leaves little dust thingies from the towel, right? And it's wet now because it's a wet towel. So we use something else. Maybe we use a dry towel. So we dry it, but it's still streaky because it's humid and it's still leaving little fuzzy balls from it. And so we use water next, so it gets rid of the fuzzy balls, but now it's wet and it's still streaky. And so we use different ways to clean it, right? Same way with our practice. We use the different practices to use to wash away the defilements of the mind, to lessen the grasp of the 3 poisons of the hindrances, and eventually we'll get to that smooth, clear, finished mirror where we can truly see ourselves, see the emptiness in things, and attain enlightenment or some level of enlightenment. So that is the practice. That is the practice that we should be doing. I can definitely say, as lay people, especially for me, back pre-monkhood, our life doesn't want us, or our mind doesn't really want us to escape the pleasures that we already have during our day, right? Because typically if we work or go to school, the only thing we want to do when we get back home is just relax, right? Maybe drink a little, eat a little, sleep a little more, play video games, right? We got away of the torturous 8 hours of the first half of the day. now we just want to relax for the second half, right? And because of that, it's hard for us to motivate ourselves to go home and either read the teachings of the Dharma, the sutras, and to just not only read, but actually put it into practice, right? To meditate, to actually sit down and be able to contemplate what we just studied. Because, just by coming to the temple once a week, or studying once a week, or 30 minutes or a half hour a week, whatever, doesn't make you a Buddhist, right? Same thing with like any other religion. Going to church once a week doesn't really make you a Christian or a Catholic or whatever, right? It's not the temple that makes you, or the church that makes you whatever religion you are. It's what you do in your life, right, that creates a good person. So you can be a very good person, you can be a very good Buddhist, a very good Christian without having to go to the temple or the church, but you have to put those teachings into action, right? You have to put them into place. You have to be able to do what the Buddha taught you, or Jesus taught you. You have to put it into work, right? You can't just go to temple, go to church, listen to the teaching, to the preaching, and like, oh yeah, that's such a good idea. That's such a good point, right? Help the poor, meditate, be generous, be nice, be kind, don't kill, don't whatever. But then the second you leave the door, you're like, all right, let's go ahead and slaughter some cows, have like 5 pounds of steak, right? You kind of forget everything that you just heard and told yourself you would do or try to do. So that's why a lot of books, a lot of teachings emphasize mindfulness, because mindfulness is a big part of the practice. Because if you can be mindful of something, then you're not just being concentrated on what you're doing, but it also helps you establish to see the bigger picture of things, right? I always say that if we are mindful just by walking out and walking to our car, if we truly are mindful of practicing maybe walking meditation or something, we will always see something new, right? Because we just have of just walking from point A to point B, and you're like, yeah, you're aware that there's trees, you're aware that there's dogs, you're aware there's a street, but if you really do it mindfully and with concentration, you'll see some of the beauty of a natural beauty around you, right? Maybe you'll see a new flower somewhere, or a new tree, or a new plant, or just see the shape of whatever, right? You're able to see things a little bit more clearer to really help establish the awareness of things around you. We'll stop there. Any questions, concerns, comments, emotional outbursts? I would just recommend to, and this is hard for me too, right? The kind of establish a constant mindfulness. What I usually do when I'm either walking out or just cleaning or something, I'm always trying to chant a mantra or chant, a part of a sutra that I've memorized, just to keep you focused on the practice, right? Because otherwise, what happens when we're not being mindful is you're recalling, past experiences, right? So we're getting angry at something that happened before, right? Like, oh, contractor didn't do this or do that, so we're talking smack about it, right? Which unfortunately happens a lot nowadays because we try not to, but so we're either thinking of something in the past, or we're like being anxious about something in the future, right? So we're upset about something that didn't happen when it was supposed to happen, and then we're upset about the future, like, oh, this is delaying us, or this is whatever, right? It's causing such turmoil in our mind that just becomes frustrating all over again. So if we're able to establish mindfulness and concentration, or at least just focus on something present, right, it'll help stop the thoughts of the past. That already happened, so there's nothing you can do about it, right? So something didn't happen, or something did happen, it wasn't the right way or right thing. It already happened, we can't change it, right? There's no point of talking crap about it, right? And then we can't determine the future, right? We're just anxious about the future, we're anxious about deadlines, we're anxious about what's not going to happen, what's going to happen, right? We're not psychic, we can't predict the future, so why even worry about it? But the problem is our mind, our thinking mind, is addicted to time. It's addicted to the past and addicted to the future, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, right? It doesn't want you to be present because it's afraid of the presence, because the presence is the only true moment in true reality, right? It's the only real thing is the present. The past already happened, the future hasn't happened yet, so they're already gone, right? They're not real anymore, they're just concepts now at this point. So if we're able to kind of watch that thinking mind, right? I think I talked about this a few weeks ago. If we're able to watch our thinking mind, we can see the habits, the patterns that creates, right? So sometimes maybe we're, I'm just going to use the example of the construction because that's the only thing I think of, right? Nothing goes on around here except the construction. So for instance, if I'm just constantly thinking about, the deadline, the what hasn't happened yet, what needs to be happening, right? And just kind of really just bitching about the construction or the people or the work, then that doesn't really do anything anymore. I'm just venting at this point, which is okay because I think Leon and I like vent to each other all the time. But there has to be a point where it stops, right? Because otherwise you're just bringing it back up again over and over again, and you're just causing more suffering. Exactly. You're suffering about things that's already happened. And I tell teacher all the time, I was like, look, it's done, right? And teacher now he's becoming more patient, and he's teaching me to be more patient because the guy is driving me crazy. But at the same point, me and Lamb were like, it is what it is, right? We literally cannot do anything about it. Things will just happen, right? Everything is a cause and effect. Everything is karma. So if the construction is moving slowly, or something didn't happen, or shouldn't have happened, or happened incorrectly, like the roof on our temple is backwards, right? All that is karma, really. It's just, it's things that we may not necessarily have control over, but maybe that's just our karma. Maybe it's our karma to have a backwards roof. Maybe it's our karma to be waiting over a year for the construction to happen. Maybe it's our karma to have this construction worker be so stressful, right? Because bad situations can truly be our teachers, right? And so the whole moral of the story I take from this whole process and situation is patience, which I think I've developed a little bit better since then, right? I always tell teachers, like, we should do this, we should do that. And teachers like, no, just be patient. It'll get done, right? It'll finish. It's taking time. Right. It's either gonna get done or it doesn't get done. Regardless, there's really nothing we can do about it, right? We are not construction workers, so we can go out and help do the work or anything, right? It's really in control of someone else. And because of other different situations, we really can't intervene so much or push too much. But I always have to remind myself, and sometimes maybe I remind myself too late because I'm already venting, and then I realize what I should be doing or thinking, right? But that's being mindful. Exactly. You're catching yourself, and that's kind of the point I mentioned. When we're meditating, if we're being distracted, it's okay to be distracted as long as you're able to recognize that you're being distracted. Then your true consciousness kind of caught that thinking mind. It's like, no. Exactly. So, yeah. So that's why we emphasize the mindfulness, because if you're able to be mindful, you're able to stop those thoughts from taking over. You're able to stop the negative feelings or emotions or thoughts that you're having about something, someone, somewhere, and kind of be present, just be aware of what's happening. What can you control? What can't you control, right? So if something's already happened, you can't do anything about it. Something in the future is still in the future. Whether you have control of how you can manipulate it, that's fine. If not, don't worry about it. But being able to concentrate in the present and be present, right? So if you're using a mantra like I would, or if you're kind of reciting something, or maybe you're contemplating a teaching, right? You're reciting the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path. You have something kind of you have a good distraction from bad distractions. Basically, what it is, right? Because even being mindful, if you're saying a mantra or teaching or whatever, right? It's still technically a distraction because your mind's not clear, but it's a good distraction to avoid and prevent bad distractions from coming. Okay, I'm actually going to stop now. Okay, questions, concerns, emotional boosts? No. Okay. So we will invoke our teacher's name, share the merit, and we'll go to the chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full alignment. Yeah, I want to get the bell. Body, speech, and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the bell. May the hearers awaken from forgetful and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful brings me back to my true home. In gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful effort, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripen. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. The incense in the censer now is burning all the Dharma realm in every place auspicious. Clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and grain Bodhisattva. Homage to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. Homage to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honor future Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattva, and the magic mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Homage to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, her story great vow Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great purity like Bodhisattvas. Great compassion mantra with 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. Rani runs like this. Namo Ratna Trayaya, Namo Harya Avalokita Shavaraya, Bodhisattvaya, Mahasattvaya, Mahakarunikaya, Om Savalavati, Sodana Sasya, Namaskritva Namanarya, Avalokita Shavaradantava, Namo Nilakanta, Sarvadata Shubham Ashiyom, Sarva Sattva Namo Pasava Namo Bhagama Bhate, Tadyata Om Avaloka Lokate Kalati Hiri Mahabodhisattva Sabo Sabo Mara Mara Mashi Mashiridayo Goro Doro 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 Bashati Mahabashati Dara Dara Dirini Shvaraya Jala Jala Mahabamara Modhilahi Shina Shina Alashin Balashari Basha Basmin Barashaya Holo Holo Pra Holo Holo Shri Sara Sara Siri Siri Soro Soro Bodhaya 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 Maitreya Nilakansa Risharana Vayamane Swaha Sitaya Swaha Sitaya, Swaha Sitaya Ye, Shvaraya, Swaha Nirakante, Swaha Pranila, Swaha Shisamahokaya, Swaha Sattva Mahasataya, Swaha Chakrasaya, Swaha Padma Keshaya, Swaha Nilakantam Pantaraya, Swaha Mofoli Shankaraya, Swaha Namo Ratnatrayaya, Namo Arya Avalokite Shavaraya, Swaha Om Sidyantu Mantra Pataya Swaha. The Dharma body is bringing morning light in concentration. My heart is at peace. A half smile is born on my lips. This is a new day, and I vow to go through it in mindful. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha diligently bring your mind. Meditation. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya. The one who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly pure. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere as my own person. Reflects in all Buddhas to whom with my whole life I go for refuge. Offering light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude. Teaching and living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Shakyamuni Buddha, the awakened one, to whom we bow in gratitude. Cutting through ignorance, awakening our hearts and our minds. Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, to whom we bow in gratitude. Working mindfully, working joyfully for the sake of all beings. Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of great action, to whom we bow in gratitude. Responding to suffering, serving beings in countless ways. Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, to whom we bow in gratitude. Seed of awakening and loving kindness in children, sprouts, and all beings. Maitreya, the Buddha to be born, to whom we bow in gratitude. Showing the way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude. The Dharma is deep and lovely. We now have a chance to see it and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. Dharta Prajna Paramita, the Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the deep course of perfect understanding, light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill true with feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shadi. All dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in empty is neither form nor feelings, nor perceptions, nor mental formations, nor consciousness, no eye, tongue, nor body, or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origins, and no extinction, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because there is no attainment. The Bodhisattvas ground in perfect understanding, find no obstacles for their minds. Having no obstacles, they overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at full right and universal enlightenment. Therefore, one should know that perfect is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible mantra. Prajnaparamita should therefore be proclaimed. Gate, gate, para, gate, para, samgate, bodhiswaha, gate, gate, para, para, samgate, bodhiswaha, gate, gate, para, gate, para, samgate, bodhiswaha. We invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to listen in order to understand. We invoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open heart. We will sit and listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to we will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying and also what is being left. We know that just by listening deeply, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person. We invoke your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and into the heart. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or reacting. We will look deeply so that we will be able and understand the roots of suffering through the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffering, thus freeing ourselves and other species. We invoke your name, Samantabhadra. We aspire to practice your vow to act with the eyes and heart of compassion, to bring joy to a person in the morning and to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is our own happiness, and we aspire to practice joy on the path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to us. We know that if we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves may become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our species. We invoke your our name shitty God, but we aspire to learn your way of being present where there is darkness, suffering, oppression, and despair, so we can bring light, hope, relief, and liberation. Places we are determined not to forget about or abandon those in desperate to establish contact with those who cannot find a way out of their suffering, those whose cries for help, justice, equality, and human rights are not being heard. We know that help can be found places on earth. We will do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth and to help transform the hells that already exist. We will practice in order to realities of perseverance and stability, so that like the earth we can always be supportive and faithful to those in need. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way, understanding, and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty, and the dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people rally, realizing the mind of love. Taking refuge in the Dharma, in myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the of liberation. Taking refuge in the Sangha, in myself I aspire to help all people, fold communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. I also wanted to announce But I forgot that on October 3rd, it's a Saturday at 8 a.m. to 3-ish p.m. We'll have a day of mindfulness, which is basically a day of helping and volunteering with the temple. We'll have things to do mostly outside. But since they're outside, we have the ability to kind of socially distance everyone when possible, when needed. So please join us on October 3rd, Saturday, 8 a.m. for that day of mindfulness.